All right, so for this lecture, we're going to take a little bit of a look at conditions for the digestive system. And I'm going to tell you that this is by no means an exhaustive list of some of the conditions that can happen for the digestive system. You guys saw quite a few on your reading guide, and we're just going to kind of compare those down just a little bit and take a look at a couple of other ones, okay? So the first condition that we have here is what's known as uh, phenyleukotrienia, or also known as PKU. This one is an hereditary disorder that's caused when infants cannot metabolize amino acids, specifically the amino acid phenylphylline. And the reason for that is they're missing the enzyme that allows them to do that. So their body's not producing it. Because of it, the body actually needs that alanine to kind of stimulate brain growth. And without it, obviously, then those individuals are going to have some sort of brain growth problems, specifically mental retardation, and then they are going to require a specialized diet that doesn't have that amino acid in it because their body can't break it down. So these kids a lot of times will be told that this is some of the things they really can't eat. So they can't eat meat, dairy, nuts, eggs, beans, because those contain high amounts of amino acids as well as proteins. And it's kind of a huge issue. Kids are tested usually right after birth to make sure that they don't have this, because if treatment is started pretty quickly after birth, then we usually don't see as many issues from there on out. Okay. Next one we can have is gallstones. We talked a little bit about these and we spoke about the bladder or about the liver itself. Gallstones are caused because of a buildup of bile in the gallbladder. Usually people find out that they have gallstones when they eat really fatty meals, because then the gallbladder tries to contract, and then the stone itself actually gets stuck in the cystic duct leading to the small intestine. Again, sometimes these can be ultrasounded and broken up, but most often they actually have to go in and either just simply remove the gallbladder itself, or try to remove those stones from there. But again, the piping and tubing from there is really small, so it's hard to do that. Another condition that we can run into is what's referred to as acidosis, or better known as ketoacidosis. What happens here is we have a really acidic level in the blood. And usually this happens when people eat diets that do not contain hardly any carbohydrates. So they're really trying to um, eat a diet that contains mostly fat and protein. And because of that, then the body starts to metabolize its own carbohydrates for fuel, or it starts to metabolize its own fat for fuel. And really can lead to some issues in the body. In short term, usually it doesn't cause a whole lot of bigger problem, but a lot of times people who do this can end up with diabetes mellitus, so they can end up with kind of problems because of that, because their body is eating so much fat that they really need to try to kind of curb that. So it is one of those things out there. A lot of times people try to eat this kind of keto diet, this diet that's a little bit higher in fat and protein, but you do need some of those carbohydrates to kind of burn as energy, because if this is left for too long, obviously the acid level in the blood can then cause some damage to internal organs. Another one we can see is what's referred to as jaundice, and this is a condition of the liver. So as the bile starts to build up in the liver, it causes this kind of release of pigment that causes yellowing of both the skin as well as eyes. Eyes usually show up first, kind of get this yellowing of the eyes, and then from there, the skin starts to kind of turn yellow. Um, most often, people with jaundice have some sort of liver damage. So the liver is being either damaged by a form of hepatitis, usually A, B, or C. C is most common, but it can be any one of those, and the damage that's being caused to the liver leads to this condition. You can also see this in people who have alcoholism, so they have cirrhosis of the liver, because the cirrhosis can cause this kind of damage, and that's usually where it shows up first. All right. Controlling your digestion, again, there's a lot of reflexes, and this is mostly driven by our parasympathetic, so this kind of rest and digest um, form of our nervous system. The chemicals and mechanical receptors that are located in the wall then are all triggered by reflexes. So when you swallow something, that stretch reflex going down the esophagus prepares the stomach. The stomach stretching then usually prepares the small intestine, and then obviously the large intestine is then triggered by stretching and movement within the small intestine. So all of that kind of continues on down. Um, Stimulus, again, we just talked about this, the stretch of organs. pH of contents can also, so obviously in the small intestine, we can see a triggering release of those alkaline enzymes to kind of bring down that pH after it leaves the stomach. And then the presence of breakdown products. So obviously, once you put those products in place, we can start to see. So if there's a fatty bolus making its way into the small intestine, the gallbladder is going to release bile to try to break that down. If there's a lot of carbohydrates in the system, the pancreas is going to release insulin to try to break that down. Reflexes, anything can kind of be included here. So activation or inhibited by the glands, glandular secretion, and then also smooth muscle activity. One of the major reflexes that should be intact pretty much at birth, though, is this kind of sucking reflex. A lot of times, if you'll take and kind of move your finger next to the cheek of a newborn infant, they'll try to kind of initiate that reflex. And that's what allows them to hold on and kind of continue to feed. Okay. Like I said, there's lots of other ones. There's different types of hernias that you can see. So a hiatal hernia is a hernia that goes of the esophagus up through the liver, sorry, through the diaphragm, and that a lot of times leads to indigestion as well as heartburn. You can also have hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids would still be considered part of a homeostatic imbalance for the digestive system. So those are an enlargement of blood vessels around the anus. And you could also see inguinal hernias, hernias where the parts of the small intestine leak their way out into the pelvic cavity. Usually, men are more prone to inguinal hernias because the testy distends through that canal, and because of that, it already creates a kind of weakening of that wall. Women are less susceptible to that because there's no dissension of any organ through that wall, so there's no area that has any issues. But lots of hernias sometimes can be caused by abdominal surgeries because we're cutting through the abdominal cavity. So anybody who's had a previous surgery, so either a removal of, like, say, their appendix, or removal of in the case of women, the removal of, say, like in their ovaries, or the tying of the fallopian tubes can lead them a little bit more susceptible, as well as cesarean births, because any kind of cut through the abdominal wall can cause those. Okay. All right. We're going to stop there. We'll try to get things finished up and review tomorrow.